Hello everyone, in this video we will be writing our third and final body paragraph for our literary analysis essay. Just as we've done before, you'll want to make sure that you have handy a digital copy of your short story, your literary analysis pre-writing document, and of course your Google document in which you have been typing your two previous body paragraphs. Just remember to hit return and tab before you begin. So just as we have done before, we want to make sure that we begin our third body paragraph with a super strong topic sentence, one that identifies, again, a third, very distinct, very different literary device or narrative choice, plus our unique observation about what this device adds to the overall story. Let's go ahead and take a look at our model. If you remember back to our previous videos, our first body paragraph analyzed setting. Our second body paragraph analyzed indirect characterization. And in this third body paragraph, we're going to see that we're going to focus on yet another very distinct literary choice. We want to begin with a transition word that helps to signal to our reader that we're moving on to our final idea. So we start with the phrase, lastly. Connell chooses to tell his story using the third person limited point of view, which allows the audience to experience the events of the plot like a high energy action film. So you see that we have identified a third and unique literary device, in this case, third person limited point of view. And we've also identified how this impacts the story as a whole. Well, it creates this feeling of watching, right? Because we know that third person takes us outside of the action of the story, and it's like we're watching the whole thing happen like a movie in front of us. I want you to also consider what your topic and main idea will be. Then go ahead and pause this video. Feel free to utilize our help text up here, modify it as needed to draft your third topic sentence. All right, with that topic sentence written, now we need to make sure that we are finding a really strong piece of text evidence to prove this statement to be true. As we have discussed in the past, you want to make sure that you are being picky, that you are selecting the best possible piece of text evidence to prove your point. We want to look for something that's a little bit shorter rather than trying to quote an entire paragraph. Maybe think about cutting down or editing down a longer quote by using an ellipsis, or maybe just finding a shorter selection that helps to convey that same idea. Last but not least, don't forget to try to avoid dialogue when possible. That's two characters talking back and forth to each other. We want to stick to description, narration, or the words of a single character. Once you have found that perfect piece of text evidence, you can go ahead and move along to our context and setup. All right, so with your perfect piece of text evidence in hand, now we need to first focus on introducing that piece to our audience by really placing them within the world of the story, at which point that quotation begins. We want to think about answering the questions who, where, and what is going on in this scene. Remember, try to avoid too much summary. We just want to give them enough information to place them within this moment in the text without getting lost in unnecessary retelling. So let's take a look at our model text here. This is particularly clear during the final chase scene in which Rainsford is running frantically through the jungle to save his own life. So we know when in the story this takes place. It's the final chase scene. We know who is involved, Rainsford. We even know what Rainsford is doing. He's running frantically through the jungle. So you want to think about the types of details that will be relevant to setting up your particular quote You can even use this help text to support the writing of this sentence. When you are done, you can go ahead and continue to press play and move on to your text evidence sentence. All right, so we know that this is a very important part of our paragraph. We call this our quote sandwich because there's actually 3 pieces of information that are included here. We have our lead-in, we have our quote, and then we have our MLA in-text citation in that order. Let's go ahead and take a look at our model text, and then we can select from the various options in our help text menu to get started. Our model reads, Connell writes, ever nearer drew the hounds. Rainsford forced himself on toward that gap. He reached it. It was the shore of the sea. Across a cove he could see the gloomy gray stone of the chateau. 20 feet below him the sea rumbled and hissed. Rainsford hesitated. He heard the hounds, and then he leapt far out into the sea. So this is a great little bit of narration that really features that third person limited narration. And notice it's very heavy on the description part, which really kind of emphasizes that point that I'm trying to make about being able to visualize all of this like it's a movie happening in front of us. Again, when appropriate, make sure that you have that lead-in properly punctuated. And then we want to make sure that we have that in-text citation at the end. Now here's an interesting little detail that you may have noticed. My in-text citation only includes the page number. Now this is a rare instance in which we would leave out that author's last name, and that is because Connell is actually introduced as part of our lead-in. Because we are putting his name here, we don't have to put it again down here. All right, so just think about that as you continue to move forward. All right, why don't you go ahead, preview some of the various options here on our help text menu. You may select from these sentence stems, or you may simply use them as inspiration for your very own. Go ahead and pause the video now, and when you're ready to move on to that explanation, you can click play again. All right, you are in the home stretch. 2 sentences approximately to go. Remember, these are 2 arguably of the most important sentences in your entire paragraph. This is where we really draw that laser beam connection back to our topic sentence. So we want to think about answering the questions. What does this quote or piece of text evidence mean or show? And how does it prove my topic sentence to be true? All right, let's take a look at our model, and then we can select from our help text menu to actually get started writing. This example of third-person limited narration shows how Connell engages his readers by putting them side by side with Rainsford as he fends off new dangers, while still building in great visual details that activate the reader's imagination. So again, you can really see here how the writer is drawing that clear connection back to that topic sentence, proving the fact that this is third person limited, and then how it impacts the reader and their overall experience of the story. Now, once again, we have our menu of help text sentence stems here. You can select 1 to 2 of these, or again, you can use those as inspiration for your very own sentences. Go ahead, pause your video, and finalize your third body paragraph now. Congratulations! You are almost there. You are inches away from finishing up your third and final body paragraph. All we need to do is we need to check our work. So this is where we go back to the beginning of our paragraph and we read it all together, and we sort of go through our little checklist here to ensure that we have all of the key components of a strong literary analysis paragraph. Let's review our model, and then we want to compare that to what you have written. This paragraph reads, lastly, Connell chooses to tell his story through the third-person limited point of view, which allows the audience to experience the events of the plot like a high-energy action film. This is particularly clear during the final chase scene, in which Rainsford is running frantically through the jungle to save his own life. Connell writes, "Ever nearer drew the hounds. Rainsford forced himself on toward that gap. He reached it. It was the shore of the sea. Across a cove, he could see the gloomy gray stone of the chateau. 20 feet below him, the sea rumbled and hissed. Rainsford hesitated. He heard the hounds, and then he leapt far out into the sea." This example of third-person limited narration shows how Connell engages his readers by putting them side by side with Rainsford as he fends off new dangers, while still building in great visual details that activate the reader's imagination. As you can see, we have a clear focus around a single literary choice, in this case, point of view, third-person limited point of view. We also provide clear context that sets up our evidence. We have a strong piece of text evidence that really helps to exemplify that particular literary device. We also effectively explain how our evidence supports that topic sentence by drawing it back, using even the same language, right? And then last but not least, we ask ourselves, does our paragraph require more evidence to prove your point? You certainly could add another piece of text evidence in this case, but I would also argue that this paragraph really kind of does the job. The point is made clearly. The point of view is consistent from beginning to end, so we don't really need to show any change or any growth. So this could probably be left as a simple literary analysis paragraph with only one iteration of that pattern that we've been learning. All right, make sure that you walk yourself back through your own paragraph, measure it up, not just against our model, but also against these self-check questions as well.